All right. Welcome to episode 54 of the Jake Blanchard podcast. Quick commercial here for Fellowship brand. They sell premium men's grooming products, stuff for your beard like oils, balms, butters. They got a tattoo balm that's also absolutely insane. I use it every day. Check them out, fellowshipbrand.com. Code JBP at checkout gets you 10% off your order. Quick fun fact as well, co-owner of Fellowship Brand is a guy named Diego Verduzco. He's a former guitar player from El Nino. They just launched a super band that's currently tracking at number 3 on the iTunes rock charts. The track is called Not Even Human. The band is Lions at the Gate. They're friends of the podcast, so go and check them out. My guest today, Curt Cuscino. He's the founder and CEO of Hyper Life Brands. It's a progressive brand development and marketing agency helping disrupt the B2C lifestyle startups and engage the Millennial Generation. They help startups, disruptors, all kinds of companies really know their brand, know their audience, which is cool. He's a visionary creative, and he's looking to make positive change in the world and deepen relationships through technology and digital communities. He's also the host of Future Sound Show, a weekly nationally syndicated radio show where he curates a continuous mix of modern sounds from around the globe. Curt, pleasure to have you, my man.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, Jake.
Dude, I'm doing great. It's an awesome day when I can talk to an entrepreneur who knows his niche, that
Check.
knows how to drive value and is interested in music. So I'm pretty amped up.
Check. Right on. Yeah, absolutely.
Cool, man. Well, hey, let's find out a little bit about you. What part of the country are you in right now? Where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming to you live from sunny Southern California here in actually in Oceanside, California. Just if you're familiar with Southern California, it's the very north edge of San Diego County, and basically about 15 minutes from the southern edge of the Orange County line, just divided by the Camp Pendleton giant
base,
marine base there. So we're just kind of strategically positioned between Orange County, Irvine area, and San Diego, the city proper, which are kind of both like 45 minutes north and south of where we are now, and about an hour 15 or so from Los Angeles.
Yeah,
so downtown.
Is that where you're from originally? Kind of grew up in that area?
I spent, so I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, actually. So I'm from the Midwest. Where are you again?
I'm just outside of Boise, Idaho.
Idaho. Okay. So I grew up on the left side of Missouri, Kansas City, Missouri. Yep. Go Royals and Chiefs. A couple things I got to check off my lifelong bucket list, the championships there.
There you go.
So I grew up there. I was the only child, and graduated high school, went straight to University of Missouri, Columbia, right in the middle there. So Mizzou Tigers, you probably hear that there in the Midwest. And graduated college, had 2 job offers, and decided to take one just as kind of a stopgap for my continued efforts in music, and B, because I knew I was going to start a marketing, branding, something kind of agency that did creative and tech and in all that has become Hype Life Brands today. And then since I've been doing that for like 20 years, about halfway in, I ended up expanding the agency out to a second office in Los Angeles. So then I ended up being the one to spearhead that. So I relocated to Los Angeles, and then kind of my second in command at the time, Zach, he ran the Kansas City office, and then been about 9 or so years in Los Angeles, and then just moved a little bit south after I met my wife and we had a first son. And so we decided that we love LA. She's LA native. I love LA. I miss that kind of energy from there, but we needed to move a little bit farther south just be a little bit closer to some semblance of a little bit of her family out here that we have, and not be raising children in Los Angeles. So, but be within spitting distance. So
you're like a creative person from the jump. It sounds like you were involved in music all growing up then, and then how'd that manifest into like wanting to develop creative assets or think creatively for others through marketing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Interesting facts. So I grew up an only child, and sometimes I wonder if that gave me the space, more of the space in the room to create. Like I have two little boys now, and I can just see they're constantly, they're 3 and 6, and they're almost constantly at each other's, bothering each other in some way. And then when they work together, it's a beautiful thing. So hopefully it's a phase. I don't know.
It's going to come in and
have.
out. I've got a 7-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl, and one
Okay.
day they're trying to choke each other out, and the next day they're holding hands in the park. So I mean, I think that's
Exactly.
a lived
Yeah.
experience of most of us, hopefully.
So I grew up an only child, and so I had a lot of free time, and I don't know. I did a lot. Had this I remember having this bug to always create, and I always loved music, and I had first discovered my mom's clarinet as like the first kind of instrument I remember, and asked her what it was, and she showed me how she knew how to play it. So I didn't know anything, so I decided to play that instrument. I believe it was I guess it would have been junior high, I think, maybe even 5th or 6th grade. I'm not even sure. Whatever I did, I became first chair in clarinet. So there's a fun fact. I like to drop fun facts on different shows that I'm on, so people
Let's do
can
it. That's
see if they're paying attention. So
breadcrumbing right now.
yeah,
Hashtag first chair clarinet.
that's right. So that was the first instrument I really learned to play, and I learned music with. Then I found my dad's guitar hiding in the closet. So just as I have a guitar hiding in the closet at home, and I have one in our office here. So I found that, and of course, same thing. Dad, what's this? He kind of, I think I remember playing, and I was so young, I didn't have calluses. And so my dad hadn't probably changed the strings on this old acoustic guitar for probably 15 years. So I believe I started playing with my hand, and I cut my hand, and I was bleeding. So that was my first experience, because I didn't have any calluses on my fingers.
Of course.
But anyways, so long story short, I picked that up, and I started to learn to play that. And I ended up in classical guitar lessons, and learning there. Now, meanwhile, I'm also messing around with drum machines and sequencers, because I was very into kind of early electronic music. At some point I discovered that. And so I was getting into how do you make all these blips and bleeps and all that. So I found a old Roland drum machine, one of those big black boxes that just has all the pads. It's kind of like an early MPC, but I found it at a pawn shop or something. And so I bought that, played around with that, started making music, ended up getting a Roland keyboard, an XP50, which is what Trent Reznor used to make Pretty Hate Machine.
Yeah.
And so I had the resources to get that after I had worked the job and all that. So to kind of come back around to your question, I had that sort of thing developing that I tell people today. I'm a left and right brain thinker, a whole brain thinker, systems thinker. So I think about kind of the entire ecosystem, and all the intricacies and details of that. So that went all the way back to making music. And also as an entrepreneur, I mean, I had a small business when I was little, where I was making little greeting cards on a really crappy, old a TRS 80 type of computer, a monochrome screen. It's all yellow and gray, and printing it out on those that paper with the butterfly, I think it was the butterfly holes on the side.
I know exactly what you're talking about. My grandma used to make all of her cards on that. She was a pretty tech savvy lady, and she'd send you these, and it had the whatever, the 16-bit character doing something,
and then
holding
the little
flowers.
Print. Exactly. And then we had all this made with squares, and it's got the printer lines because your toner is not quite right. So so I made those. I did insides and outsides, and then I sold them to my little family, my grandma and stuff like that. And so that was my first business, was this greeting card thing I did. And then along those lines, then I started a mowing business and go around the neighborhood, the whole nine, getting flyers, designing pricing, making flyers, printing them, figuring out your pricing, posting them up, getting calls, following up. I'm doing all this. I'm like, at this point, I'm probably 14.
Yeah.
So got clients in the neighborhood, serviced them, kept everybody happy, never lost anybody. I never went
100%
to
client retention at 14.
Yeah, 0% churn. So yeah, I never went to the point where I started hiring other kids to do the job. Because I've always been a stickler for quality control, and that's something that my dad taught me too, you know, like what a good finished job looks like. And that's definitely something I'm carrying forward with my kids, you know, like finishing the job, finish the task, because, you know, kids can get super distracted, and so can adults, but you know, like trying to teach them not to get distracted and finish a job. So you can kind of start to see the early themes of my own personal story and my journey that has led me to here, you know, to Southern California, Oceanside. And it's not anything I would ever do differently, but that's kind of how I got here. And then I come from a line of engineers. So my dad's a very like technical guy. And he went from kind of like mechanical environmental type of engineering, and then he got into computer engineering. And so there was a summer in there, like I think I want to say again when it was like maybe when I was 14 or 13, it was like I'm starting to dabble with, we're getting AOL and CompuServe and like messing with GeoCities websites, and you know, and then I'm starting to make music seriously enough that I want to have a website. I'm setting up an mp3.com profile. MySpace might have come around more when I was like 16. Yeah. But doing that, designing cassette tape covers. We were putting out an EP on a cassette tape, this electronic group I was in with my friend. So we formed that, branded it, that whole thing. We actually played shows, so we did flyers. I mean, so you can start to see these themes stacking up.
I love it. Did you record those cassettes on like those little 4-8 channel recorder kind of things?
Yeah, we did. I think we did demos like that, and then we actually, like, I was booking studio time before I could drive a car. So I remember we went to this guy, Keith Caster. That's a fun fact right there for you. I haven't mentioned that on any podcast. So Keith Caster was this guy that had a recording studio in, I want to say, Independence, Missouri, which was once the meth capital of the world, by the way.
Fun fact number 3.
Since dethroned. But yeah, he had a like a pretty nice recording studio set up in his basement. And he was known like in the Kansas City music kind of scene that I was in. And so we went over there and I think I recorded with 2 different bands actually in his basement. So that's kind of where it started, because we knew that the 4-track was doable, but it wasn't good enough for us long term. So it was just like, hey, we'll, you know, need more than 4 tracks first of all. So we'll do it this way, and then we'll go over there and we'll record it all proper. And that's what we did.
For sure, man. So I love this arc that you're taking me on right now, man. So there's obviously a lot of creative energy. There's some, there's definitely some industriousness to you as well. Like, hey, I'm going to go create this business. I'm going to go grind. I'm going to go mow lawns, because then I control my own purchases. I get to go buy things that support my interests. I get to kind of build the complexity of that up around me. And then, you know, again, you go get the education, you graduate from school, you start this building a brand, Hype Life, or this company. Sounds like I'm torn between 2 questions right now, because I want to be like, hey, what was the trials and tribulations as an entrepreneur? But then also I want to know, why'd you go focus in on kind of the millennial generation, one which I think, are you a millennial, by the way?
I'm an elder millennial. Yes. A child of the 80s.
Okay. And I am as well. And I don't always identify. I don't identify as a millennial. I try not to. I'm deeply entrenched. I was born in 86. So I'm I'm definitely categorized as a millennial,
You're,
but
yeah, you're in the
I don't
Hearthstone there.
I don't feel like the traditional archetype describes me. So maybe take me on that path as well. So it's like, okay, you start this company. Where did you find the opportunity, and specifically around that age demographic, if that's where you guys focus?
Okay, yeah. So let me try and answer that, and we'll continue you on the journey.
Yeah.
So in my music endeavors, I ended up in high school basically because business brain and brand. I was thinking, well, we got to release this music on like something, and we're not going to get on a record label right now, so I'm going to make a record label. I'm going to form my own. In fact, I want to form my own because I already know what these guys are doing. I was reading books about the business of music at that age too, so I got it all. I understood like how it all worked. It was no mystery to me. And so I formed my own record label. Then, because I was already doing creative design work, actually digital design, because I was building websites somewhere around the age of 17, 18, something like that, maybe a little bit earlier because of GeoCities. Um, so I was like, well, we're going to do that all in house because I want control over how the music, what's the visual wrapper that goes around this, because all these bands I'm getting that I'm following, I'm buying all their CDs, cassette tapes, and then CDs. I love what I'm seeing, and like I love the different paper stocks that are being used. And I eventually got records, and so I was loving like pulling it open and pulling all this stuff out, or a CD jewel case that I'd take it all apart and see what was underneath the holder for the disc, even the ones that had black, because sometimes when they weren't clear, they had stuff hidden under there. I just freaking love that. That again, that detail level of work was always extremely satisfying to me. So I love that, and I wanted to make sure that I carried that into any music that I was involved with. So I created this record label. So I'm releasing stuff that I'm involved with on there. Eventually, I actually brought one of my friends' bands onto there, and they did pretty well for a period of time. So I had like these two sides of the house, right? So I basically have this, what I would actually have called at the time, like more of a music production company going on. So I got record label side, design, creative, brand. I wouldn't have called it that then, but like basically the marketing side. Okay. So you got the whole enterprise there. So I did that all the way and released albums or EPs, all the way into college. And at some point in there, my friend's band did really well. I got them actually charting on college radio. And basically they failed to follow through and tour, which was the deal. And like, it's like you're charting, you're in the top 10 at all these college radio stations because of the money I invested in this radio promotion campaign. And then you guys can't go tour because one of your guys' parents won't let you. Well, like deals off at that point. So I just realized this is very volatile, and the people that I'm sort of like, the bands can be very volatile, members can be volatile. And I think that's true even as when people are adults too, but this got this like design side. And as I'm getting into college, I'm starting to get jobs and things at the University of Missouri, Columbia, dealing with websites and fixing things and coding and designing new websites, but also adding like logical things. And I was getting into Flash and animation with all of it. And so you got one side is like making money, and the other side is like a money pit. So I decided I would split them off. And I eventually just put the record label to the side, still kept doing music, and used that vehicle from time to time. But basically, that's kind of when I split the two off, that's 2001. So that's when what is Hype Life Brands today was born. So out of that. And that's, you can see kind of the bucket of what we were doing, what I was doing as the first person, doing all the work and being a solopreneur at the time. You can see what the roots of it. So you have Flash animation, branding, logo design, creative, website design and development, what we call digital today, and copywriting, and some level of strategy even at that time. Although I would say from 20 years back to today is like 100x difference in the depth of what that is. So let me answer your millennial question now, and then I'll shut up for a second. So how do we get to the millennial piece? So we had naturally been attracting clients from, even from the earliest days. We had some clients in the Midwest in like Kansas City, but it was never really about that. So we were always attracting a lot of clients from the coasts because marketing. So built a brand, made a very innovative website. The very first website of this agency was all Flash. It had all kinds of cool little bells and whistles, animations. It would follow your cursor around, and as your cursor moved, we always did little tricks like we'd take the XY coordinate that your mouse was in and do something with it. So like trigger some kind of animation that you didn't even know what was going on. But it was like based on where your mouse was. Yeah. So,
and I think a lot, and if I can just touch on this for a second.
Please do.
Because I was into Flash in that kind of 2001 to 2004.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, for sure. But I think people forget how innovative that suite of products were. And I don't know if your website was built on Dreamweaver or whatever, but like the Flash cascaded really nicely into 3 or 4 different other applications. You could build some pretty innovative stuff for a low cost of entry if you were willing to invest the time and do frame by frame and everything that you had to do to create it. There was all kinds of websites. Was it the Higher Grounds or something like that? There's all these like underground websites where people would build these Flash animations and put them out there or leverage Flash in some way, shape, or form. So it's really cool to hear about that. I haven't thought about that in about 15, 20 years.
Right. Yeah. ActionScript was very powerful, and it was a object-oriented scripting language. I don't frankly really know that it was any different than JavaScript, which is kind of funny to see JavaScript come back in recent years to be like fashionable and what a lot of stuff is built with.
And then Flash.
Much more. And then Flash was taken out. Well, it wasn't taken out back. It was basically shot in front of its own deli by Apple.
Absolutely.
In cold blood. So, but yeah, it was very powerful if you got past just doing keyframe animation, so like we would do that, but we would trigger it programmatically. We did some very in-depth. So we did a really big architecture firm's website all in Flash. It was very involved. And it would load projects dynamically. So we finally were getting into the stuff where we were basically creating a site. Because if you remember it all about Flash, you had to like a video, you had to go in, edit it, republish it, re-upload the SWF. So at some point, as an agency that is progressive, we're always like trying to think, how can we do that better? So we got into really studying, and I was investing in training with some key employees at the time. Like, let's build a Flash container that also, by the way, isn't, 5 megs in size, which at the time was huge, or well, I don't even know what the size was. I know they were always like fat. They were always very chunky. So that's why you had to have the loader, and, depending on internet speed, which of course isn't what it is today, people get, you had the skip intro thing and all that. So we wanted to make it really lightweight and load all the content externally and dynamically. So like, that's what we were doing. So we were getting really into that. So we won some awards for various things there that we produced. But all that to say, we were working very much on, maybe not in the very first few years, but there was always a theme of kind of like, even if they weren't all of our clients, like kind of cool culture, pop culture, like we did at one point, we had a client in LA while we were based in Kansas City that was like a really funky pet boutique, and then we got a really funky clothing boutique also from California, by the way. And then we had a startup come to us that was like a doctor that was doing something with secure communication between, I think, secure and anonymous communication for patients to be able to ask, if I remember correctly, something like ask a physician a question without, that might be embarrassing, but be able to do it confidentially. So we made all this really cool brand around this thing. We worked with a rapper or two, and we did photo shoot, did packaging. We worked with a really cool clothing line with a really talented artist that was one of the co-founders. So that sort of stuff, like, so some kind of street culture or pop element or something. So come around like about 10 years into, so probably around 2011-ish, we kept evolving our brand, and like we always, tell our clients and work with them, you got to iterate and evolve. So we were evolving and expanding, and as new things were coming on the frontier, like social media, for example, wasn't there when I started this thing, but it came into the mix, and it was like, wow, our our clients are starting to have other problems, but we can solve those too. They don't know what the heck to do on Facebook, but like we do. And so we started to add things to our services mix. And also, while going through this repositioning, it kind of became apparent that, that have our culture rich on some level that we can contribute to, because everybody on the team is some sort of culture sponge in some way. And so that was like really played into it. And it was kind of one of those things where we were kind of realizing we were already doing it. We just weren't talking about it properly. So that's where the repositioning, rebranding, everything was redone at that point, because it was like, this is really what we're doing and what we're doing really well, and what's exciting to me and what my passions lie in. And at the end of the day, we're dealing with, we actually called it, it was Gen Y. Millennials are also called Generation Y. We have print materials, still a few of them left, where we did this whole campaign where we actually went and got photographs from and asked Gen Y members, and AKA what we only call millennials now, but originally it was Gen Y. So we went and asked them questions about their preferences. So we took a picture, got their permission, asked them a question, posted that on social media, including Tumblr. And we also made pieces, and we had sort of like a blog project thing that was called This is Gen Y. So we did all of this before millennials were a talking point in the media by several years, because I had already made that decision that that's what we were going to do. We're focusing on consumer lifestyle type of brands that are making, doing some kind of disruption towards some level of positive change. So that's the long answer to your question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Well, I appreciate that. But it's really interesting as we look at the way generations progress. And I think the natural progression is one, a lot of influence before a lot of purchasing power independently, right? So we see usually specialty goods like Air Jordans come to mind, right? Early on, where it's just like, oh, that's the cool thing to have in school. That's the cool thing to show. So it starts with things like that. And by the time someone gets into their 30s, it becomes cars. It becomes certain lifestyle brands or whatever it is, or vacations to certain places. So they will end up having that influence. So looking at what they like early, then tracking that and helping inform others about how those tastes have changed at aggregate seems to be pretty interesting. So as you've got some expertise in that space, let's talk a little bit about Gen Y, man. What's Gen Y all about?
Yeah. Boy, it's a big question. I could go on forever. I've spoken on this for like an hour and a half. So in the past
maybe we just hit the tops of the waves, and I know we'll speak in generalities, because there's obviously exceptions to the rule everywhere.
Right. So one of your questions, or one of your comments earlier. So one thing that you have to understand about our generation, you and I, millennials, is that it's a really big group of people. We're talking like, 70, 74 million, 80 million in the US alone, right? So to your comment, like, well, I don't really resonate with these other millennials over here. Well, that's totally fair. I feel the same way. But we typically divide the millennial generation first at a starting point down the middle. So we got the older half, which is like you and I, and the younger half. And I think a lot of what's happened in the media and, when we were positioned in the space, and then the media started to talk about it. And I think you had a lot of Gen X, but also baby boomer writers poo-pooing the millennial generation for all the various reasons that, kind of stereotypes, but there's a lot of nuances between the two sides. And I think who's getting a lot of the negative commentary is the younger side. So that's where you're hearing, they're lazy, they're entitled, they, eat Tide Pods, like none of that.
Trophy generation, right?
Yeah.
But then again, somebody has to give them the trophy.
Right. But if you think about it, I mean, there's so many ways to think about it, theories and stuff. But to me, it's like, you and I kind of grew, I like to say I grew up on literally like on the tech wave. So like I remember having CompuServe in my house because of my dad, and then having AOL, and then having, well, I don't even remember what AOL. And then I think I probably went to college after that. I don't know if we had any kind of DSL at that point. So going to college and then getting like high-speed internet, and then Napster.
The last generation that was actually writing command scripts on computers at some point in time before it kind of matured, or Windows matured, or Apple.
So even though it's tech we're talking about, there was some sort of like ability to evolve more gradually with it. Like kind of, it's a little bit, I got a cell phone. Like I got a Nokia Sprint phone, my dad's hand-me-down from when I was in high school, probably about when I was like 17 or 16, when I started driving, only for emergencies. Then I was allowed to talk a little bit on it, but up to a certain limit, because you had a minutes limit, and you didn't want to go over that because then you got charged like $1 a minute or something crazy.
It was like 200 minutes. Like it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
It was not a lot of minutes.
It really wasn't. No. And so that was like how we eased into it. But for the younger millennial side, they were basically born digital natives. So everything's right there right now. Now it has evolved obviously, but things were so much more faster paced, and so sometimes I think that while we have to work with it, I think the facts are that, that's affected something about the psyche of the older half of the very broad millennial generation and the younger half. So I think that's a starting point. And then, millennials, like you said, they're very tribal in nature. And when you hear about generation, the millennials, they can kill anything in a minute, well, they grew up again in tech. They're digital natives. It's how they communicate primarily. And so you have things like social media have come about and all that. And word can spread very fast on the web through those things. And if you don't understand millennials, then you can definitely piss them off. And that's how things get killed, overnight, because it's just like they get so many messages thrown at them that if you're not authentic and real in your messaging, yes, even as a business, you're going to fail miserably. And it's going to be really, you're going to get put on blast basically at some degree, depending on how deep your infraction. So
yeah, and my observation, and again, I don't have a level of depth here, but this is just my perception, is that as individuals and brands continue to align with those, I don't know, causes, those, millennials have an expectation of like, hey, you're going to do something socially responsible with this money in some way, shape, or form, or like you're going to invest into a cause, or you're going to be bigger than just a bag of Cheetos, right? Or whatever, interbrand here. There's kind of like this tipping point where it becomes inauthentic by nature. Like just becomes virtue signaling of just like, oh, we're a brand and we donate back to this thing. And we always
Right.
wanted to do that. Like it just
Right.
it kind of seems like everybody has a play in that space now. And you're just like bombarded. And it's like, I've never thought that the pin that I buy needs to be fully aligned with my social and political psyche. Like it's like a weird marketplace that we're in right now.
Right.
So I don't know if you can talk to that at all.
Yeah. So, so there's a lot I could say about this too. It makes me laugh. But so when we say lifestyle brands, so when we went back and really me, one of the mistakes I think I made as an entrepreneur was trying to have the people in my agency all agree with me. So like it's not a democratic decision, but I tried to make it that. That was my first point of failure. So when I figured out that I needed to, and this was partially through the help of a mentor as well that I worked with, I felt that things that impacted our lifestyle in some positive way, that was what was really exciting. And I think because what you're dancing around there is that because it serves a purpose. I like things that serve a purpose. And I think that those are what have the most value and merit in life in general. Yes, there are things that are just big, I like to say big, dumb fun. Like I want to go see the new Fast and Furious movie. Is it going to win an Oscar? No. It's just, I put movies like that in this category called big, dumb fun. I remember I took my wife when she was pregnant and we saw, I think the last one with the last Paul Walker movie. I was like in heaven,
Yeah.
I mean, I think I might have cried at the end. I don't know. But, I can separate that from other films that are like really deep and like are going to win an Oscar or maybe a potential. But so to kind of what you were talking about, we focus on the lifestyle piece for those reasons. And I've watched over time as other brands in the space try to evolve, and ones that maybe weren't ever a lifestyle brand and didn't really need to be started to follow this trend, which is what you're hitting on. Like, oh, we're a lifestyle brand too. Moves like even Starbucks did it. When these brands who were very what driven start to change their names legally to represent something bigger, that is a move towards a lifestyle brand. So Starbucks coffee changed its name to just Starbucks. Domino's changed their name from Domino's Pizza to just Domino's because they want to open it up to be bigger, because they're going, oh, that's what Nike and Apple were doing. Because Apple went from Apple computers to Apple, but like way before everybody else. So then as they start to try to become these sort of evolve, like, oh no, we're part of your lifestyle, which is what Starbucks wants. They want you in there 3-4 times a day, and they're accomplishing that. And they've been doing wine and food and pastries and this and that and tea and, they're doing at least, I don't know where they're at with it now, but I know they were pushing to do beer and wine. So they want you in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night. And then to hang out after too, if you're really into it. So then there comes this thing where in being lifestyle, you have to sort of embrace some sort of purpose. And a lot of brands kind of go over the line, which is what you're saying of like, oh, well, we're this insurance company and we love to support, whatever cause, insert cause here, and that's where you and I, the distinguishing millennial who gets a lot of BS thrown at us throughout the day in messages and poorly done marketing and advertising, go, really? Like this month, it's Pride month.
It's Pride month.
I'm seeing a lot of brands throwing up a rainbow.
So here's the thing. Like, I wanted to talk to you about this because it's all about like timing and the cause. Cause it's like, you want to believe that the company is being, I don't know, they're thinking about others. They're trying to make a change. They're trying to move the perception culturally.
Trying to be altruistic.
Altruistic. Absolutely. That's a great word. But then like, so Skittles, for instance, they just released, and I saw it. I mean, I don't know if this is 100% true, but I believe it is. They took all the colors off of their Skittles, and that they're releasing just like gray Skittles. They're like the only rainbow that matters this month. is for Pride Week. We're taking the rainbow out of our candy. And I look at that and I look at that and I'm like, man, one, that's genius. Like, it's smart. But
Yeah.
two, it's like, I don't know, man, how am I supposed to know what flavors what? But now you got me. Cause like, and now if I don't buy it, am I against it? Cause I'm not, like, conceptually, like I'm supportive of the month,
Yeah.
but I
See,
like the
that's
colors of
what's
my
hard
Skittles.
about,
Like, what do I do?
that's what's hard about, I think about those things sometimes and I think, man, while we have definitely worked with and we've danced with lots of, corporate entities like that, it's just like, man, like, just riding the same pony for like 30 years. Like, you got to, what are you going to think of next? Like, that to me is just not needle moving. Like, yeah, they did that. Yes, we're sitting here talking about it. So I guess I have to say it worked to some degree. Now, I haven't seen this, so that's news to me, but it's kind of smart, I guess, but it's a gimmick, So then what? Next month, we're back to the colors. The rainbow is forgotten. And now it's not Pride Month. And, if that's your thing, great. But yeah, like,
Well,
now it's gray. If you don't know what the flavors are, did Skittles need to do that? Are they going to sell more Skittles? Or is it just a show? I mean, that stuff to me is just kind of lost. It's like some agency worked with them for probably like 3 months on this concept.
Yeah.
And then changed all their production and their approach, and then created advertising. Like, that's a lot of work for something that is valuable on maybe on a moral level, or again, it's like that altruism. Is it a gimmick, or I don't know. It's
and I'm sure it's done with the best intentions, but at the same time, like, the long term, like, do we really need every brand that we do business with to tell us how they feel about social political issues? And
no,
and I think at some point in time, and we're starting to see, maybe it's the top end of Gen Y that you were talking about, or the millennial generation, the older, is like, man, I've been through this a lot right now, and I'm just exhausted. The times that we're in is so exhausting. And in fact, I'm looking for businesses to just, could you just make sure that your hiring practices are fair and equitable? Could you just please have incentive programs for the people that work in your business to be able to take time off, maternity leave, those types of things? Run a really good company. Tell me what you're donating to, but you don't have to change your products to appease me based on this month or that month. Just make a really consistent, high quality product. That's what I know you as, is the candy people, not the people that removed your rainbow so that you could tell me what's important this month. And again, and I don't mean that in a disparaging way, but I do mean that in a way that's like, you've put me in a weird position.
Yeah.
And I'm exhausted.
Yeah, I hear you. Like, every brand does not need this could be the underline for this interview. Every brand in the world does not need to be a lifestyle brand.
Yeah.
That is not for everyone. If you are in the lifestyle space, which since when we positioned into this for our agency and working with lifestyle startups and challenger brands and lifestyle brands, it was never about saying we're a lifestyle brand. It's more about showing people that. And even if you are focused on portraying a story that other people can resonate with, you don't always have to, exactly like what you said, tell us all the things that you want to look like you care about. Just run a solid brand, make solid product, provide a solid service. It doesn't have to change with every single month that comes around or whatever. Like, you don't have to attach to every theme in the world right now, I think that's what's got to be realized.
Interesting times that we're in, for sure, man. And so any other, cause I'm being conscious of time. And we went 45 minutes just burnt quick, man. But I want to ask, like, where are brands really making, I don't want to say mistakes, but like, what's a common misconception that you see working in this space? Like, people go in with their assumptions of like how to create a lifestyle brand, or maybe startups specifically. I know you work with a lot of startups. Like what's the challenge there? Where are they amiss? And then where are you usually kind of correcting them?
I think probably the biggest thing that we hear and see is people, so a visionary founder, entrepreneur, or even a CEO that's launching a new brand or spinoff, they is jumping into things like logo and website design. Now it sounds very tactical and almost like trivial to me, but that's the thing that we hear the most. And it's like taking that can be a pretty deep step in without having any business strategy, brand strategy in writing, organized, and having a overarching strategic layer, or what we talk about, I use the metaphor of building a pyramid. Strategy is the biggest, broadest base level of that pyramid. And without that, everything else is built on basically sand. And so when people do this, and then they come to us, it's like, well, I don't even know that this name really, you're telling me over here, this is kind of who you think you want to target or go after, or who this is for. That needs to be defined, researched, and really broken down. And then you have gone ahead and made like these creative decisions based on basically nothing. And then, a lot of times the name is either not trademarkable, or it's very focused on what as opposed to why. That's why I brought that up earlier. So we're big believers in the start with why philosophy, which if you've heard of Simon Sinek, you've probably seen the TED Talk or read the book or heard of it, whatever. But that's like one of our big pillars of our brand development methodology. So I think that's the biggest mistake. And the reason people do that is it's almost too easy to drive yourself into the ditch there. It's easy to just go, oh, click, click, click. Oh, I've got a Shopify website, or I saw the commercial for Wix and now I have a Wix site, but you can't do anything with those things. They're very limiting. And, at the end of the day, it's not about the tactics you use. It's about the heart of the brand. And I think people just want to like shortcut, and there's no shortcuts. You're building a business. There's no shortcuts. Businesses that have been around for 20, 30 years, even 10 or even 5, like to be sustainable, there's no shortcuts. There's no growth hacking. That is a farce. And so I think having to like get into that sort of question mark space and then back up and figure out, well, wait, what am I doing? Because otherwise the other alternative is, oh yeah, great name, your brand identity makes total sense, and your website looks phenomenal. None of those things may actually be true. So if we then go start marketing and we don't know who the audience is, there's no strategy, there's no messaging developed, then that drives your cost of customer acquisition up. It costs you more money to get customers and unexplain, re-explain, explain in a different way what you're doing, because you're not even positioned right as a business. Your brand isn't positioned. Your visuals aren't communicating the heart, the core of why you're doing this and why you built this company or brand or venture in the first place. And it takes startups to a point where they fail. There's a reason 9 out of 10 new businesses fail in the first 2 years, right? You've heard that stat, right?
Absolutely.
There's a reason for that. And I think more and more it's because of this type of sort of missteps. Like, hey, we're going to build the company. We need a logo and a website. We say, hold on a second, let's back up. Tell me what the concept is. Where is this? Where do you want to launch this? Let's talk about unique buying tribes and what they look like. So I think that's my long answer to your question, but jumping ahead is long-term costly if you do this kind of steps that we have sorted out in our methodology in the wrong order, which is very easy to do these days.
My man, you just dropped some serious knowledge bombs there for anybody who's got a business that's starting to go. And you better take some time and take inventory of what the base of that pyramid is, or you can certainly spend a lot of time, effort, money, high turnover associated with brands that don't know who they are. People get in for one reason and they realize it's not what they thought. So, there's a lot of different opportunities to increase your ROI
Right.
if you're purposeful. Hey, as we're wrapping up here, we started on the discussion of music. I really wanted to get to the future sound thing that you're doing as well. And would you mind unpacking that a little bit? And
Sure.
it seems like you've got hundreds of episodes out there of this. Like, where is it available, and why are you doing it, and what is it?
Yeah. So let's see here. The short version is, so I've always been involved in music. So I touched on that kind of earlier in the show. I've always been involved in music. I've always had an interest in electronic music, dance music. Way before in America, we had the electronica wave, and now we have the EDM thing going on, which is just all extensions and generations below the electronic music I was listening to back then. Like I'm talking about Underworld. I'm talking about Crystal Method, Future Sound of London, that sort of stuff. Getting into you mentioned you like metal, like getting into the industrial side of things.
Yeah.
Back then. So KMFDM, and my friend was really into Skinny Puppy. I could never get into Skinny Puppy, but like that era. And then of course, Trent Reznor came along, by the way, and caught the wave and took that and made it pop.
Yeah.
And
With 9 Inch Nails.
that
right?
was it.
Yeah.
Exactly, with 9 Inch Nails. So I've always been into that. And then I've made electronic music off and on throughout my life, either in a group or on my own. And so eventually, as I got busier and busier with the agency, I had less and less time to write and produce my own music, but I always wanted to have a foot in music because it's just something, it's an outlet for me and something I love. So I started Future Sound, which is a now nationally syndicated weekly radio mix show that focuses on a certain kind of bass-centric strand of EDM, kind of like trap music, future bass. It's got a lot of relationship to hip-hop, which I grew up on, in addition to a lot of other genres. And it's often very progressive. So as I mentioned, our agency is progressive and kind of looking always at the bleeding edge. I do the same with music. So I like to see what's the newest. I've always followed underground bands and acts and all that. So Future Sound is a way for me to curate those things, create a mix. I used, especially when I lived in Los Angeles, I used DJing as just a way to get out and showcase both my own music, but also tie it in with other people's music to create an experience. And so the show was just sort of a natural extension of that. And I started that. It went on I piloted it. When I was in Los Angeles, I used to drive down to San Diego to pilot it on this little San Diego radio station, FM radio station, Res Radio. Shout out to them, by the way. So that kind of gave me my first outlet, because like a cousin of my wife or something had told me that they were looking for shows. I was like, oh, I actually have a concept for that. I'm going to write this up. So now it's been like 3.5 years running. We've got FM affiliate stations all across the US, either on or near college campuses. So they carry the show, typically air it in prime time on like Friday and Saturday nights. You can see all of this, hear the show, get it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. You just go to futuresoundradio.com. One more time, it's futuresoundradio.com.
Yep.
And yeah, you can tune in every week. There's an hour-long mix. I have voiceovers as well, and kind of introduce different tracks that I want to highlight. And yeah, it's definitely, if you're into EDM, dance music, dubstep, future bass, or none of this that I'm saying makes any sense to you, but you just like a rich sonic experience that you can study to or play video games to, you should check it out. It would be, you will enjoy it. So, and it's also a brand that we've actually kind of built in-house at Hype Life Brands, and continue to run it. There's multiple people on my team involved with the weekly production of the show, all the social media assets, getting the show pushed to podcast land. We built a tool here from a tech standpoint that helps us deliver the show to the affiliate stations each week, gives them what they need. There's a lot that goes into it in producing it, but now we've got about a FM listener reach, about 1.7 million. So it's not a fast thing in radio at all, but over the last 3.5 years, had like basically constant outreach and outbound marketing going on for the show, the radio rep, hitting kind of these college stations, and eventually we get in one and we get in another, and then one of the, I think 3 stations ago, we added a station, 10,000 watt station at Notre Dame. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But,
so
you're not doing anything kind of with one toe in, are you? You're like,
no.
And
it's a great exercise. Like, can you brand yourself?
Yeah.
That's like to me, that's the ultimate exercise.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
I mean, these are all obviously natural, and it's authentic to who I am and my past and my journey. But at the same time, if anyone ever wanted to ask us like, oh yeah, but can you do this? It's like, well, I don't necessarily bring up future sound, but I'm thinking about it. Like, I bet you can't brand yourself and make a show and a concept and get it to here. And yes, we're on episode 238, I believe was the last one produced. That's 238 hours. Each hour is original mix, no edits.
Dude, I listened to whatever the newest one was today in the gym this morning when I was working out, and I was like,
nice.
This is good workout music, man. I was dialed in. I was like, yeah, it's not boring at all. It's fun. It's engaging. It's good workout music too, man.
Yeah, that's totally good point.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Hey, well, you're exactly the kind of people I love having on the podcast. I hope you'll join me again at some point in time. I love talking about your childhood and just the interest in technology and building businesses and how that's manifested, and what a cool and interesting career you've had. And I've loved kind of finishing this up with music as well, a passion of mine. And certainly, I aspire, hopefully at some point in time, this podcast has got 1.7 million listeners. That'd be pretty fun.
Right. I was going to say, I want to have like the Joe Rogan experience with you, where we actually sit in the studio.
It's
we can smoke cigars.
It's
like, we can talk for like 4 hours, right? Isn't his show like 4 hours long?
It is. His show is a real long time. I've limited mine to, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. I've got one episode that's going to get released soon. That was about 2 hours long. Wow. So it's just so challenging to do on this medium, like Zoom calls for an hour. Right. But eventually I would like to get a studio space and start having people show up in person. And
that would be so cool.
You'll be one of my first ones. I'll pick up the phone and call if I can make that happen.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Curt. Hey, where else can people find you on social media, find your businesses, find your brand? I know you shouted out Future Sound. Anything else?
Yeah. If you want to connect with us at Hype Life Brands, you have building a startup, you have you could have a website and a logo, and you don't know where to go from there. You don't know what to do about actually marketing and attracting the bees to your honey, or to your flowers, I should say. I would love to chat. So you can reach out to me and our team at hypelifebrands.com, not hyper, but hypelifebrands.com. There's a chat block on there. You can chat with us in real time. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. My first name is Curt, last name is Cuscino, Cuscino. Or you can just probably search for Curt Hype Life and you'll find me there. So yeah, reach out, and my email is curt@hypelifebrands.com. Feel free to just email me directly, and we'll chat and we'll see how we can help.
Curt, man. Hey, well, I appreciate you carving out some time for me today. Looking forward to next time we chat, and take care.
All right. Thank you.